Bringing back the Hexo hybrids, baby. Oh man, you know better than that. Probably, man. Ooh, do we have a victim? Man, these dudes is trying to take me out, bro. This heroic stuff is actually... Victims. Let's go. I see you trying to flank, bro. Come on, man. I see you, dog. Got a lot of victims over here. Bro, how are you doing that if you on fire? That's the very reason I did that. I'm out of here. This room isn't safe. This room isn't safe. There's no cover. I'll go for it. Oh man, this is crazy. These heroic bounties is tough, man. We making it through. Let's go. This guy's a nuisance again. Okay. On to the next room.
The Hexo. A word that just sounds fire. And for those of you who are unfamiliar, the Hexo hybrid build is a mix of high-end and exotic pieces to create a powerful and versatile setup, offering a unique collaboration of stats for optimal performance while in combat. The term Hexo originates from the combination of hex, hexadecimal, referring to the gear's unique attributes, and exo, exotic. Well, you all know what that is. And the purpose of this build is to first of all hit hard, but also accompany that damage with some insane versatility in the skills department, specifically status effects. That in combination with the crit in this build is beautiful. And oh yeah, I've been itching to pull out the shock trap for a long time, and this inspired me to utilize a named SMG that is rarely used. But with this build, it's now become a part of my normal rotation. I couldn't be happier with this fusion. Check it out. Alright, we're here once again with another build. And honestly, I wasn't planning on making one, but you know how when you're in the lab and you're just messing around, putting pieces together here and there, you got some ideas. This came up and I thought of an old build that I made a long time ago called Blind Fury. That build was fire, and it was before the capacitor, it was before the ninja bike. It was at a time where I really had to dig deep to try and make hybrids work, because nowadays it's easy to make a hybrid work because you have all the tools you need to deal the insane damage that will allow you to mix and match gear pieces and weapons. But back in the day, it wasn't like that. So if you had a hybrid build, it was special. And this concept is based on that idea. Now let me get straight into this. I'm using the technician specialization. So when I first used this, I didn't even test it out in the gun range. I just put it together and I'm like, okay, let's see how it works. Surprisingly, it hit super hard. The stats are 2, 2, and 2. 2 skill tiers, 2 armor cores, and 2 weapon cores. This gives you some nice, decent damage, but with the attributes and stats, it allows for it to hit really hard. Okay, first of all, I'm using the St. Elmo's. And I use off-meta builds a lot, you know that. This means that I don't use meta weapons as much. But when I looked at the St. Elmo's attributes and stats, I'm like, yo, okay, this is why people are using it so much. 20% crit chance, 20% crit damage. This gun is insane. 70 rounds in a magazine. But the fact that it has an electric status effect that it applies to enemy after a certain amount of rounds, I had to do something with it more than DPS, which is why I wanted to make this Hexo hybrid. So for my secondary, you might be wondering how I'm using this, because when it came out, it's called the Cabaret, and it has something called Thunderclap, where it deals 40% damage to targets who are shocked. And at first when I saw this, I'm like, how am I going to use this? Am I going to use the St. Elmo's, shock the enemy, then switch to my secondary, then shoot him with this? Nah, that's doing too much. But with this build, it works out perfectly because I'm using a shock trap, and I'm going to get into that a little bit later. Alright, So first of all, looking at the build, if you notice I have certain items on here that give me status effects as a value. The Golan Gear backpack, one of my favorite named backpacks, the Anarchist Cookbook. It has Perfectly Wicked on it. 18% weapon damage to targets that are affected by a status. I have crit hit damage and status effects rolled on here. And the first piece gives me status effects. Another piece I have is the Sokolov gloves, the named firm handshake gloves with a native status effect rolled on here. I just roll crit damage. So basically, as you can see, the stats that you want to roll on here are crit damage and status effects. Now what makes this a Hexo hybrid is the fact that I have the Vial Mask. And the Vial Mask has something called Toxic Delivery, where whenever you apply a status effect, it inflicts an unavoidable damage over time effect on the enemy. And this damage scales based on status effects and explosive damage. Now, I don't have any explosive damage stats on here. If I did, then it would increase it more, but there was basically no room for that. I didn't want to use a 𝐤𝐤𝐵𝐞 because I wanted to use Wicked, so I couldn't use the explosive damage attribute that would be on the second piece of the Grupo Samba knee pads that I have. But the first piece gives me crit damage. And of course, I got the 𝐤𝐳𝐫𝐞 holster with crit chance. So you see what I'm doing here, right? I'm trying to get all the values that I need to get the most amount of crit damage and chance and the most amount of status effects. Now, I was wondering if I should replace this chest piece, because this is a Hasberg chest piece that gives me headshot damage for the first piece, but it's the named version of Trauma, Perfect Trauma. The changes aren't that much different, but I was thinking maybe I should do a Fenris chest piece so I could increase my assault rifle damage, because you see I have Sokolov already for the SMG damage. I just think that Fenris will be perfect. What do y'all think? Let me know down in the comments below. This build is just so great from so many different angles. You're bleeding the enemy, you're blinding the enemy, you're shocking them, and you're burning them. Okay, so anytime you apply any of that, Toxic Delivery is activated, and there's even more damage with that. So let me get to the skills, and I'm going to show you the stats at the end so you can see how much crit I'm dealing and everything like that. But you all know I'm a big fan of the Fire Sticky Bomb. I can't say which one is my favorite. I just know that the Fire might be one of the best between the three, because you could just quick shoot this thing. You do not have to detonate it right away. You could just leave it on them while it burns them. And you know, status effects increases the duration of the burn. Doesn't increase the damage, but if you have a good amount of status effects rolled onto your gear, that burn is gonna hurt. And then once you detonate it, it just creates this AoE to when anybody's around it, they'll get affected as well. If you don't know how to quick shot this, it's very simple, because all of the skills have something to where if you double tap the button while you're aiming at the enemy, it's going to automatically quick shot it. And this doesn't only apply to the sticky bombs. If you shoot the chem launcher on the ground, let's say the fire starter chem launcher, double tap the button, that cloud is going to detonate. If you double tap the button when you have a blinder firefly, it's going to throw out a blinder firefly and affect the first enemy that's in its path. So this works with every skill. You just have to figure out how you want to do it. Even with the shock trap, even if you double tap the shock trap or any trap, it's going to throw it right up in the air. You do not have to aim this. So every skill has a quick apply and one that you can ADS, so you can strategically place it. But speaking of the shock trap, this is what I was talking about. When you have skill tiers, this thing is amazing. By the way, I have 3 skill tiers since I'm using the technician specialization, and I have the Sokolov and Vial Mask. So that's the definition of a hybrid in this regard. 3 skill tiers, 2 or 3 armor cores, and 2 or 3 weapon cores. You can decide what's best for you in that way. But the shock trap, even with 1 skill tier, if you throw it out, it has a lot of traps, and they stay there for as long as the enemies are not running over it. So it's like kind of a area of denial safety net for you. If you have even more, which I do, 3 is more potent. So you feel like safe and more protected, and you get like a notification if somebody's trying to flank you. So you set yourself up in a certain position and prepare for the enemy to come at you. Once you do that is when you pull out the cabaret, and that's where you can really see this thing shine, man. The named SMG I was talking about, man, that thing hits hard, and it's one of my favorite SMG variants aside from the Vector SBR. The Vector SBR hands down is my favorite, #1 when it comes to fire rate, damage, all of that. The Vector is actually the Ouroboros variant. That's why the Ouroboros is so strong. But yeah, here are the stats. So you can see what I'm doing here. And it's pretty impressive for a build that's not catered all the way to it. As you know, if you're playing with a team, they're going to increase your crit even more with Coyote's Mask. 9 times out of 10, somebody's going to be using that. But that's the build, fam. Let me know what you think of this Hexcell hybrid. I think I'm going to start doing more builds like this. I've been getting kind of tired of using the capacitor, even though it's so good. And yeah, I just think that the St. Elmo's assault rifle has so much more potential than just for a DPS build. So let me know what you think of this down below. I appreciate you watching to the end. Oh yeah, and if you want to see the full playthrough of the bounty that I did, I'm going to upload that a little bit later. So you can hear the commentary and see how much fun I was having in this build. If this helped you out in any way, then like the video and subscribe to my channel if you're new here. I'll see you in the next one, fam. Be right out.